Let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment that felt too perfectly timed to be an accident? A conversation that answered a question you had never spoken aloud. A book that seemed to find you instead of the other way around. A dream that lingered in your mind for days because it carried a feeling you couldn't explain. Or perhaps you kept seeing the same idea, the same symbol, or the same opportunity appearing from different directions until you finally stopped and wondered, is something trying to get my attention? Most people dismiss these moments almost immediately. They tell themselves it's just coincidence. They move on with their day and return to the noise of everyday life. But what if those moments were never random? What if life has been communicating with you all along, not through loud announcements or dramatic miracles, but through quiet patterns that only become visible when your mind becomes still enough to notice them? By the end of this conversation, you'll understand why the universe doesn't speak the way we expect it to. More importantly, you'll discover that the message you've been waiting for may already be in front of you, hidden inside your thoughts, your emotions, and even the circumstances you've been trying so hard to escape. Because sometimes the greatest message isn't something you hear, it's something you finally recognize. We often imagine that guidance should be obvious. We expect a clear sign that removes every doubt and tells us exactly what to do next. But life rarely unfolds that way. Instead, it whispers, it nudges, it gently places people, ideas, and experiences into our path, waiting to see if we are paying attention. The challenge is that most of us have been trained to ignore quiet things. We're surrounded by constant noise. Notifications compete for our attention. Opinions flood our mind. Every day we're encouraged to move faster, consume more, and think less deeply. In a world that rewards constant distraction, the quiet voice within us becomes harder to hear. Yet that quiet voice never disappears. It simply waits. Think back to a time when you ignored a feeling that something wasn't right. Maybe it was a relationship that looked perfect from the outside, but never felt peaceful on the inside. Maybe it was a job that paid well, but slowly drained your spirit. At first, the discomfort was subtle. It wasn't painful enough to force change. It was only a gentle feeling. Then the feeling grew stronger. Eventually, life created circumstances that could no longer be ignored. Looking back, you probably realized the warning had been there from the beginning. The message came first. The circumstances came later. This pattern appears again and again throughout life. Before a major change happens externally, something usually shifts internally. You begin asking different questions. You lose interest in things that once excited you. You become restless without knowing why. Old habits suddenly feel empty. New ideas start appearing in your mind with surprising frequency. Most people mistake this for confusion. In reality, it is often preparation. Imagine a seed buried beneath the soil. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. Days pass. Rain falls. The ground appears unchanged. If you judged only by appearances, you would assume the seed had failed. But beneath the surface, everything is changing. Roots are growing before branches. Strength is developing before beauty. The invisible work always comes first. Your own life follows the same principle. When your inner world begins changing, the outer world doesn't transform overnight. There is often a period where nothing seems different. This is the stage where many people give up. They assume their hopes were unrealistic because they can't yet see visible evidence. But nature has never rushed its process. A tree doesn't apologize for taking time to grow. A sunrise doesn't hurry because someone is impatient. The ocean doesn't force its waves to arrive faster. Everything unfolds according to an unseen rhythm. Why should your life be any different? Perhaps the message you've been waiting for isn't telling you to hurry. Perhaps it's asking you to trust what is already unfolding beneath the surface. One of the greatest misunderstandings about transformation is believing that change begins with circumstances. We tell ourselves, when I find the right opportunity, then I'll become confident. When I meet the right person, then I'll feel worthy. When I finally achieve success, then I'll believe in myself. But what if confidence comes first? What if worthiness comes first? What if the inner experience quietly creates the outer one? This idea challenges almost everything we've been taught. We're conditioned to believe that the external world determines our internal state. If life is going well, we're happy. If life becomes difficult, we lose hope. But look closely at the people you admire most. Some remain calm during chaos. Others remain grateful even while facing uncertainty. Some continue believing in possibilities long before anyone else can see them. Their peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances. Their circumstances eventually begin reflecting their peace. This isn't because they're lucky. It's because their relationship with themselves has changed. Every day, your mind is quietly telling a story about who you are. Sometimes that story is encouraging. Sometimes it's painfully limiting. Without realizing it, you repeat the same inner conversations over and over again. I'm always overlooked. Nothing ever works out for me. I'll probably fail. I'm not ready. These thoughts may seem small, but repeated often enough, they become familiar. And what becomes familiar eventually begins to feel true. Your subconscious mind doesn't spend its time arguing with these thoughts. It simply accepts repetition as instruction. Like a gardener planting seeds without questioning them, your subconscious continues growing, whatever you consistently place within it. Whether those seeds are fear or confidence, doubt or possibility, scarcity or abundance, the process remains the same. Eventually, the harvest appears. And when it does, most people believe life is simply happening to them. They never stop to ask what invisible seeds have been growing beneath the surface for months or even years. Perhaps the universe has been leaving messages through every experience you've had, not messages of punishment, not messages of failure, mems of awareness, gentle reminders showing you what you've been believing about yourself. Because the world has an extraordinary way of reflecting back the identity you quietly carry within. And once you begin to understand that truth, you'll never look at your life the same way again. The greatest shift begins the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this experience revealing about the way I see myself? That one question changes your relationship with everything. Instead of becoming a victim of every circumstance, you become a quiet observer of your own consciousness. You begin noticing patterns that were always there, but hidden beneath habit. Think about how often the same emotional experiences seem to repeat themselves. Different people, different places, different years. Yet somehow the feeling is familiar. Perhaps you keep attracting relationships where you feel unappreciated. Maybe every new opportunity somehow ends with disappointment. Or perhaps you constantly feel as though you're chasing a future that never quite arrives. It's easy to blame the world. It's much harder and far more powerful to realize that life may be reflecting something much deeper. Imagine standing in front of a mirror while wearing a worried expression. No matter how many times you polish the glass, your reflection doesn't smile. The mirror isn't creating your expression, it's revealing it. Life often works the same way. Circumstances are not always the cause of your inner state. Very often, they are the reflection of it. This is why two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with completely different futures. One person sees rejection and concludes, I'm not enough. The other sees the same rejection and quietly says, something better is making room for itself. The event was identical. The meaning was completely different. And meaning shapes identity. Identity shapes expectation. Expectation shapes perception. Perception shapes experience. This invisible cycle repeats every single day. Most people never notice it because they're focused entirely on what happens outside of them. They spend years trying to rearrange circumstances while leaving their inner assumptions untouched. It's like trying to change the ending of a novel without rewriting the chapters that came before it. Sooner or later, the story returns to the same conclusion. Your subconscious is astonishingly faithful. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't punish you. It simply accepts whatever you repeatedly impress upon it. If every day you quietly repeat, life is difficult, your mind begins searching for proof. If you repeatedly assume that opportunities are rare, you'll overlook many that pass right in front of you. Not because they weren't there, because your attention wasn't trained to recognize them. Your attention is like a flashlight in a dark room. It doesn't create what's there. It simply determines what becomes visible. This is why awareness is so powerful. The moment you become aware of an old assumption, you create the possibility of choosing a new one. Many people think transformation happens through force. They believe they must fight every negative thought that appears. But fighting often gives those thoughts even more attention. A wiser approach is simply to notice them without becoming them. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves float past on the surface of the water. Some are beautiful, some are broken, some disappear almost immediately. You don't jump into the river to chase every leaf. You simply watch them pass. Your thoughts deserve the same treatment. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every emotion deserves to become your identity. You are the awareness observing them, and awareness always has the power to choose again. Have you ever noticed that your best ideas rarely appear when you're anxious? They often arrive during a quiet walk, a peaceful shower, a drive without distraction, or a moment just before sleep. Why? Because when your mind becomes quiet, your deeper intelligence finally has room to speak. The universe doesn't compete with noise. It whispers beneath it. This is why stillness is not laziness. It is clarity. The modern world teaches us that constant action creates results, but some of the greatest breakthroughs come from moments of deep presence rather than endless effort. A compass doesn't panic when the weather changes. Storms may surround it, but it continues pointing north. Your inner identity can become that steady. Imagine waking each morning without immediately asking what might go wrong. Imagine beginning the day with one simple assumption. Something good is unfolding for me today, even if I can't see it yet. Notice how different that feels. Nothing outside has changed. Yet your emotional posture has already shifted. And from that posture, you begin making different decisions. You speak differently. You listen differently. You notice possibilities that yesterday would have escaped your attention. This isn't pretending. It's choosing the lens through which you'll experience reality. The world offers endless evidence for fear and endless evidence for hope. Your consciousness decides which evidence becomes your life. Think about a gardener. The gardener doesn't dig up the seed every morning to check whether it's growing. He waters it. He protects it. And then he trusts the unseen process. Yet many people plant a new belief today and dig it up tomorrow with doubt. I guess it's not working. Nothing has changed. Maybe this isn't for me. Can you imagine treating a real garden that way? Growth requires patience because the most important changes happen long before they're visible. Your identity is growing in exactly the same way. Every peaceful response replaces an old habit of fear. Every hopeful assumption weakens years of doubt. Every act of self-respect strengthens the person you're becoming. Little by little, your inner world begins taking on a new shape, and one day, almost without warning, the outer world begins reflecting it. People call it luck. They call it coincidence. They ask what suddenly changed. They don't realize that the visible change was simply the final chapter of an invisible transformation that had been unfolding for months. Perhaps that's why the universe is so patient. It understands something we often forget. The strongest foundations are built where no one can see them. And maybe the message you've been searching for has never been asking you to chase more. Maybe it has been gently inviting you to become more aware of the quiet conversation you've been having with yourself every single day. Because that conversation is shaping far more of your future than you may have ever imagined. What if the message you've been waiting for was never hidden somewhere out in the world? What if it has been quietly unfolding within you this entire time? There comes a point in every person's life when they realize that no amount of external success can permanently silence an unsettled mind. You can reach the destination you once dreamed about and still find yourself searching for something more. Not because the achievement wasn't meaningful, but because peace was never meant to come from circumstances alone. Peace begins with identity. The person you believe yourself to be determines how you experience every moment of your life. Imagine two people standing on the shore of the same ocean. One sees endless possibility. The other sees danger. The ocean hasn't changed. Only the observer has. Life is much the same. It reflects your inner state more often than you realize. When you believe the world is working against you, every obstacle feels personal. When you believe life is quietly working with you, even delays begin to reveal unexpected purpose. This doesn't mean every experience will be pleasant. It means every experience can become meaningful. There is a profound difference. A storm doesn't arrive to destroy every tree. Strong roots often grow because storms exist. Likewise, many of the challenges you've faced have been strengthening parts of you that comfort never could. Looking back, you may already recognize moments that once felt like painful endings, but eventually became remarkable beginnings. The opportunity you didn't receive led you toward one that suited you far better. The relationship that ended created space for deeper self-respect. The unexpected delay gave you wisdom that later became invaluable. At the time, none of it made sense. Only distance revealed the message. This is one of life's quiet mysteries. We often understand yesterday far better than we trust tomorrow. Yet tomorrow will eventually become another yesterday. And one day you'll look back at this very season of your life with the same understanding. That realization changes the way you live today. Instead of demanding immediate answers, you begin trusting the unfolding process. Not blindly, wisely. You stop measuring your progress only by visible results. You begin noticing invisible victories. You respond more calmly than you once did. You recover from disappointment more quickly. You speak to yourself with greater compassion. You no longer need constant validation to believe you're moving in the right direction. These quiet changes may seem small. In reality, they are the strongest evidence that your identity is evolving. And identity always comes before transformation. Every evening offers you a beautiful opportunity. Before you fall asleep, close your eyes for a few moments and gently replay your day. Not to criticize yourself, not to relive mistakes. Simply notice the moments when you acted from confidence instead of fear. Notice the conversations where you remained calm. Notice the decisions that reflected the person you're becoming. Then imagine tomorrow. See yourself waking with gratitude. Picture yourself responding with patience. Feel the quiet confidence of someone who expects life to cooperate instead of constantly resisting it. You don't need elaborate rituals. You don't need perfect visualization. You simply need consistency. The subconscious responds to what is repeatedly experienced with feeling. Little by little, your inner world accepts this new identity as familiar. And once something becomes familiar within you, it naturally begins expressing itself without effort. This is why genuine confidence feels peaceful. It doesn't need to prove itself. A mountain never announces its strength. The sun never argues about its ability to shine. The ocean doesn't seek permission to create another wave. Their power comes from simply being what they are. Perhaps your greatest strength will emerge the day you stop trying to convince yourself that you're worthy and quietly accept that you've always been worthy. From that understanding, your choices begin changing naturally. You no longer chase every opportunity out of fear. You choose wisely. You no longer cling to every relationship. You value mutual respect. You no longer define yourself by temporary circumstances. You define yourself by the quiet character you're building each day. This is freedom, not freedom from challenges. Freedom from allowing challenges to define you. There will still be uncertain days. There will still be moments when old doubts try to return. But now you'll recognize them as passing weather rather than permanent truth. Clouds never erase the sky. They only cover it for a while. Likewise, fear can temporarily cover your awareness without changing who you truly are. Remember that, especially on difficult days. The universe isn't asking you to become someone else. It isn't asking you to earn love, abundance, or peace. It's inviting you to remove the assumptions that convinced you those things were separate from you in the first place. Every experience has been pointing toward this realization. Every challenge has been asking the same quiet question. Who do you believe you are now? Answer that question differently, and your life begins answering differently too. Perhaps that is the message you almost missed. Not that the universe was withholding your future, not that life had forgotten you, but that everything outside has been patiently waiting for the version of you who finally believes in what has always existed within. So the next time you notice a meaningful coincidence, the next time an unexpected opportunity appears, the next time your intuition gently whispers instead of shouting, pause for a moment. Listen carefully. Not because the universe is speaking louder, because you have finally become quiet enough to hear it. And maybe that has been the message all along. Life is always communicating. The question was never whether the message existed. The question has always been whether you were willing to receive it. When your mind becomes still, your identity becomes clear. When your identity becomes clear, your direction becomes effortless. And when your direction becomes effortless, life begins reflecting back the person you quietly chose to become. So walk forward with patience. Think with intention. Speak to yourself with kindness. Trust what is growing beneath the surface, even when your eyes cannot yet see it. Because the seed never doubts the tree it will become. The sunrise never wonders if morning will arrive. The river never questions whether it will reach the ocean. Nature trusts its design. Perhaps it's time for you to trust yours. And perhaps the greatest message the universe ever left for you was this. The life you've been searching for begins the moment you become the person who believes it is already possible.